Things haven't been the same since I almost lost the love of my life after a fatal incident. Recently, my wife, Eliana, was diagnosed with kidney failure and had been on the transplant list for over a year. Her condition wasn't improving as we found out that her immediate family, as well as myself, were ineligible to donate a kidney to her. Her blood type was rare, and even with a universal blood type, the waiting list was long and arduous. Watching her go through dialysis on the one last still functioning kidney shattered my heart to see her so sick and in the worst pain I'd ever seen her in. Holding her hand in the hospital as she weaved in and out of consciousness, it just made me feel worthless. Like I couldn't do anything to help her, except physically sit there by her bedside. That's when I knew I needed to do something more. Something to get my wife back to the way she used to be, or as close to it as humanly possible. I had to stop praying for a miracle and just do something about it. I just didn't know what to do. While Eliana was laying in bed, with her back towards me, I touched her arm gently as tears just streamed down my face. I wasn't ready to say goodbye to my wife just yet. And that's when I had a morbid idea. It popped into my head. I recalled an in-depth conversation a coworker of mine and I had at lunch that made me almost choke on my sandwich. "You ever heard of the dark web?" he whispered across the table to me. "Only in passing. What is it?" I inquired. "Think of it as like your ticket. Yeah, your ticket of getting your wife's name moved up on the organ donor list." He gave me a side eye and glanced and nodded slightly. I was taken back. I didn't know what to say. "Dude, what are you talking about? You may just have to see for yourself. Obviously not on the work computers, but I'll write down a site where to go. Do it for Ellie." He took a scrap piece of paper out of his shirt pocket and scribbled down my ticket to getting Eliana the help she truly needed. Getting home that night as Eliana sat in her comfy clothes while watching television on the couch, I came up behind her and kissed her on her neck gently. She weakly looked up at me and smiled sweetly. It may be my last chance to make things right for her before she leaves me to the great beyond. We talked about putting her in hospice to keep her as comfortable as possible, but I didn't have the guts to do it. Hospice was for old people, not someone who still had their whole life ahead of them. We wanted to start a family, but her prognosis shot that down real quick, keeping our focus on getting her moved up on the transplant list. Sitting in the family room, I pulled up an old computer, and I didn't mind things getting fucked up on it. The dark web is a scary place to explore, especially if you have never been there before. Just about everything or anything can be found on there, from drugs to sex to hiring hitmen and chat rooms that lead you down a dark, debaucherous place called red rooms. I could feel the color drain out of my face as I felt like the police were going to raid my house any minute just for even opening the tab. I've heard of dark web horror stories and people getting followed and killed and unsuspecting people from the inner sanctions of some of these sites, or their computers getting hacked and contaminated with this plethora of viruses known to man and some unknown. Although I was extremely comfortable doing this, Eliana's gaze caught my attention. I could hear her coughing from the room over, and I was instantly reminded of the reason I was doing this in the first place. I knew she would kill me if she knew what I was doing for her. I recalled a conversation we had while Ellie was at one of her dialysis appointments. She looked so fragile and sick. She could barely keep her head up. I gently took her hand and held it for a while, rubbing my thumb against the base of hers. A small smile appeared across her face as she turned to look at me, her tired eyes making my heart just sink deeper into my stomach. "Will you miss me when I'm gone?" she half whispered to me. "Honey, what kind of question is that? Of course I'd miss you. You're my everything. I want you to be happy when I go. Find yourself another love of your life and shower her with as much affection and desire you've done with me. Can you promise me that?" She leaned her head against my shoulder as a single tear rolled down the bridge of her nose. Closing my eyes and breathing in the scent of her hair, I kissed her gently and tried not to cry myself. "You're not gonna die on me. That I promise you. If it's the last thing I ever do with my life, you will not die under my watch. I love you, babe." As I was brought back to reality, I drew in a deep breath and shook my head, covering my face with my hands. Bucking up the bit of courage I could muster, I continued to scroll through the never-ending links of absolute worst possible things I've ever seen. I did my best to keep mission-focused, but I know for a fact there are things that are on the dark web that I'll never be able to unsee, no matter how hard I try. Suddenly, that's when I saw it. Exactly what the doctor didn't order, and here it was, staring in front of me. Organs for sale. Feeling the air escape from my body, I couldn't believe how expensive organs truly are on the dark web. I knew deep down there was absolutely no way I was going to be able to afford just a sliver of a kidney, and I just about gave up hope completely. That's when a text box appeared on the screen, out of nowhere, and I thought I was going to fly out of my seat. "Are you finding what you're looking for?" I started the shipwrecks as my anxiety was going absolutely haywire. With shaky hands, I thought about just slamming down the laptop screen and getting the hell out of there. I knew it was too late. I was pretty sure whoever was sending me messages already had my IP address and started tracking my activity. That's when another message appeared as my skin began to crawl. "I know you're still there. What are you looking for?" Swallowing a large lump that formed in my throat, I grew a set of balls and typed back, "I need a kidney." Seeing those 3 dots indicating someone was typing on the other end, I bit down hard on my lip as my foot started tapping quietly on the hardwood floor. Blood type: AB negative. Rarity: you must be desperate. I scoffed at their response, but kept my cool before typing back. "I can't afford what you're asking, but I need a kidney for." I couldn't bring myself to type out what I was going to say. That it was for my wife. Call me whatever you want, but I knew I probably gave out more information than needed to be shared. That's when I read something that made my blood run cold. "I think we can work something out. Transfer what you can into Bitcoin, and we'll take care of the rest." We? Who's we? I wanted to ask, but I knew I wouldn't get the answer I was looking for. But Ellie didn't have much time. My patience was wearing thin, but I knew what needed to be done. Ellie was my #1 priority as I thought about our wedding day and the vows we exchanged. In sickness and in health, till death do us part. This was for Ellie. Now it was time for me to take up my end of the vows. Converting what I could into Bitcoin and transferring the money over, a confirmation flashed on my screen with a cryptic message beneath with coordinates. "Meet us here, at this address, and come alone within 48 hours. We will know if someone is with you. See you soon." The power to my computer flickered off, and that was it. My fate was sealed. Leaning back in my chair as tears began to pour down my face, I muffled my cries so Ellie couldn't hear them. I gathered my courage, took hold of my laptop, and threw it away outside. 48 hours. I had 48 hours to get my shit together, but nothing could have prepared me for what was going to happen next. I stayed home from work and racked my brain around the message that I had seen. The one that stuck out with me was, We'll work something out. I had a horrible gut feeling about all of this, but it was too late to back out. Whatever money was in our bank account was gone, as it's now in the hands of someone from the dark web. I could feel my paranoia writhing through me as Ellie's voice broke my worry. "Hey, are you okay?" Her tired eyes looked over at me as I simply nodded. "Babe, come here." Sitting next to her on the couch, my trembling hands took a hold of hers as I gave them a gentle squeeze. "Everything's gonna be okay, Ellie," I whispered to her. "I promise I'm gonna take care of everything." "I know it is, honey. You don't have to worry. We've got this." Her soft, breathy voice almost made me spill my guts about what I was going to do. But I knew she would never forgive me. In that moment, the less she knew, the better. And that was how everything would play out. At least that's what I told myself. On the day that I was meeting at the address that I had deciphered, I asked Ellie's mom if she could stay with her while I was gone for a short business trip. Her mother detested about this, but there was nothing I could do. Giving Ellie a kiss on the forehead, and with a heavy sigh, I whispered in her ear one last time, "I'll be home as soon as I can, Ellie. I love you." Bidding my mother-in-law goodbye with my bags in hand, I took off for the parts unknown. The whole ride there, I couldn't help but glance at my rearview mirror, just expecting some vehicle to be tailing my every move. 3 towns over, I pulled onto a dark, desolate side road, where the only building around was an old steel factory. Another vehicle was parked in the front entrance, as I reluctantly decided to park ways back, in the event I would be making a run for it. But who was I kidding? If they're going to kill me, they would do it, and I accepted that. Closing out of my GPS on my phone, Ellie's face stared back at me as my screensaver faded to a dim to black. There was absolutely nothing to lose at this point, except for my life. With a loud thud of my car door reverberating around me, someone stood out of the shadows of a side door, dressed in all black. My first inclination was the guy was a Fed, and I was in some serious shit. That's when I heard my name ring out from this man's lips. "Eric, follow me." My fight or flight instincts kicked into overdrive. How the hell did he know my name? That's when I remembered that more than likely, whoever this was knew absolutely everything about me. Where I worked, lived, date of birth, everything. Following behind him, 2 more men slid out of the darkness and were right on my heels. This was it. I was going to die trying to buy a kidney for my wife. Loud footsteps echoed all around us, and one of the men from behind grabbed me by my shoulder and pushed me into the office, slamming the door behind me. Looking around nervously, an old gentleman's voice was heard from a wooden chair in the corner of the office. "So you need a kidney?" The man's voice boomed. Yes, sir." I managed to stammer out. "I want to help you, but we have a bit of a problem with your insufficient funds." My heart dropped to my feet as I shifted nervously. "Yes, I knew there would be an issue, but that's all the money I have, and say no more, son. You'll get your kidney." The man's voice trailed off, but not without a price. My bottom lip began quivering as he started to walk towards me. My brain was telling me to run, but my body was frozen in place. The old man looked at me, dead in the eye. His yellow teeth shone, and breath reeked of weeks of cigars. I swallowed nervously as I held my breath. All I could do was nod and try not to freak out. "You see, son, you'll need to pay off your debt with me. I was so kind as to pay for the difference so that your wife could live." My face dropped. My eyes grew wide. The man scoffed in a low growl. Eliana, your wife. Oh, I know all about her. That's why my heart goes out to both of you. You see, I have a daughter her age, and I couldn't bear to see her go through what Ellie is going through. So I paid the rest. Now you just do something for me. What might that be? You have to come to work. For me. Wait, what? That's right. You want a kidney? You have to get it yourself, son. But I've never... My voice caught in the back of my throat. That's why you'll be working with one of my best. Take you under his wing. You get your kidney and experience. You're going to work for me, or you'll never see your wife again. And I'll make damn sure your bloodline ends. Do I make myself absolutely clear? Yes, sir. I calmly breathed out as he raps on the chair loudly as it's being dragged out from underneath me and thrown into a black SUV I had seen earlier. My mind was racing. Everything was happening at once, and I knew I'd just sold my soul to the devil. I kept my head down the entire drive. All I wanted to do was to go home and be with my wife, but I knew I was in too deep to get out alive. After saying a silent prayer to myself, the driver grumped, and we reached our destination. Glancing upwards, we were in front of a beautiful, ornate building with spires and stained glass. A church. What were we doing here? Suddenly, I was being pulled back onto my feet again and had my head shoved down towards the ground. I wondered if this was where I would meet my demise. Being dragged through the large oak doors with a harsh slam, we were greeted by another gentleman in a dark gray robe with red emblems. My thoughts shifted from this place being a house of God right out the window. The elder led us downstairs into a chamber where there were tables with drained openings and a faint smell of disinfectant, or maybe even preserving fluids that wafted through the place. I had a horrible sick feeling in the pit of my stomach as David, the man who was taking me under his wing, whispered something to my ear. Don't freak out. When he wheels the body out, he won't feel a thing. Shock and disgust took me over as I realized the line of work the old man had in mind. Suddenly, the set of double doors swung open as a lady dressed in blue scrubs wheeled a young man in, probably around Ellie's age, and set him in front of one of the draining tables. The other men that were with us took both sides of the guy and placed him in the middle of the table. I honestly couldn't tell if the guy was even alive or dead, but I just wanted to get the hell out of there. The nurse started hooking him up to all sorts of cords and monitors, checking his vitals as they were preparing him for surgery. That's when I noticed out of the corner of my eye a video camera, particularly placed off to the side of the table. I've heard about what goes on with these events on the dark web, and I knew I was going to be part of a Red Room show. As the nurse checked his vitals one final time and gave the all clear to David, our eyes met and nodded. The elder in the gray robe turned on the camera, and it was showtime. I felt the color drain from my face, and I thought I was going to hit the floor or vomit all over my shoes. In a whirl, the elder started talking in front of the camera, as I'm the one being all gowned up. The nurse stood beside me and tried to get my attention. My jaw was hitting the floor. She handed me a scalpel and showed me exactly where I needed to make the incision. In the back of my mind, I knew this whole thing was fucking nuts. And this was so wrong on so many levels. This poor guy lying on this table probably got himself into a similar mess I had with this dark web mafia, and paid the price by having his kidney removed. Suddenly, I was overcome by an odd sensation that I couldn't explain. A calm washes over me as I take the scalpel and slice into his side. As the heart monitor beeps quieted down around me, I focused on locating where to sever the lobe and extract the deep, dark, red lump of flesh that would save my wife's life. Placed beside me was a tiny white cooler, packed to the brim with ice, and a biohazard baggie opened, ready to receive the still warm organ as the remaining blood pours over my gloves and onto the concrete floor in little droplets. I did it. I got the kidney. I couldn't believe it. Now it was time, and I needed to get Ellie to the hospital as soon as possible. As I turned to look back at David to take me back to my car, a hand roughly slapped my shoulder as I stopped in my tracks. I turned to look, and it was the elder. "Where do you think you're going?" growled in my ear. "I'm leaving. I was promised this. Now I'm going to save my wife," I barked. He glared at me, stared deep into my soul. "You're not going anywhere until you finish what you started." "What are you talking about?" No, I'm getting out of here. My wife will die without this, and there's not much time. We've done this many times, and trust me, you've got time." I looked over at a laptop that displayed a poll that was going the entire time, and my heart sank. I knew what was going on now, and a decision was made for me without my knowledge. The viewers had voted. They wanted me to kill the man on the table. A bitter, angry expression crept over my face as I shook my head. "There's no way I'm doing this. That wasn't part of the deal," I shouted. "You owe a debt. Now it's time to pay," David stated across the room. "Just do it, man. You don't want to cause trouble with us. We win every time." What choice did I have? It was either kill or be killed. There was no way I was going to die here, especially after all I just went through to get my wife what she needed to live. Handing David the cooler and retaking the scalpel, I did what needed to be done. A guttural and carnal scream erupted from me as I murdered that guy in cold blood. I could feel blood spurting onto my face and on my PPEs, but I kept going. Those sick fucks wanted a show, and I had to give them what they wanted. As the flatline tone became imminent, I threw the scalpel to the floor, gave David a death glare, and said, "Take me to my car." Without another word, I walked out of the room, threw my PPEs on the floor, and stood beside the car. David rejoined me as I gritted my teeth and stared ahead. "He didn't have to die," I spit out. "Yes, he did," David stated. "That was the debt that was owed. Now you can give your wife her life back and live happily ever after." As David goes to open the door, I slammed it shut and shook my head. I want to do it again." "What do you mean?" David shot me a puzzling look before I could react. "I've got blood on my hands, and I know once I tell Ellie how she got this, she'll never forgive me. I can't go back home. I'm in too deep. What other jobs are out there?" David was taken back, but he knew exactly what I was getting at. "I'll talk to the boss. There's always other jobs to do." David slid into the car as I followed, clutching onto the cooler, back to where my car was parked. All the while, David was on the phone with the boss. Getting out of the car, I heard him call behind me. Eric, he's got another job for you. I guess taking out that one guy wasn't enough." I understood and nodded. Knowing that my life had been changed forever, I changed my clothes from the overnight bag and drove like a bat out of hell back home. All the while, I called my mother-in-law and told her an incredible story. The story I stuck with was when I was driving home from my trip, the doctor called me and said they had a kidney and that they wanted us to be at the hospital ASAP. I could hear her blubbering on the other line as she was screaming at Ellie. Her prayers had been answered. Driving straight to the hospital, I handed the nurse a cooler and said I had a kidney for Eliana Weller, and she was on her way to the hospital. "Sir, please wait." I could hear her yelling at me, but I kept walking. I needed to get out of there as fast as possible. Sitting out in my car waiting for them to arrive. It wasn't long before Ellie and Laura were practically running into the ER as my phone began to ring, answering as if I had no idea what was going on. I assured Laura I would be there as soon as I could. Hours passed as I waited, in sheer anxiety for Ellie to be out of surgery. As luck would have it, that night, our surgeon was on call to perform her surgery without any problems. This was the moment that we had been hoping and praying for, but it cost an innocent man his life. He didn't have to die. But what else could I have done? My phone rang again as Laura called me to say that Ellie was in recovery. I sighed deeply and gripped my steering wheel, contemplating whether or not to go in or leave. Tears of anger and regret poured out of me as my heart shattered at the decision that I had to make. I knew it was the right thing to do, but Ellie would be left asking questions about what happened to me. Putting my car into drive, I took off down the road for parts unknown once again. Now that I knew Ellie was safe and going to live a happy life with her new kidney, I could move on with this new chapter in my life. In time, I'd tell her everything once I've paid off my debt to the dark web. Now, if you made it to the end of this video, I wanted to say thank you for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed it. I also want to say thank you to the actual author of that story for allowing me to be able to be the one and only person to tell that story. I want to give a shout out to Spooky Mennonite, which, if you did enjoy this story, there's a lot more in her new book that just came out and is now exclusively on Amazon. I'll make sure to put her link in the description for that if you guys are interested. Trust me, she's got a lot of really wild, really good stories. I'm telling you right now. And hopefully, if you guys did really enjoy this, I might talk to her and see if I can narrate some more of them. But a massive shout out to her and a huge thank you to her for allowing me to do this. I personally really did like this story. It's a lot different. It hits a whole bunch of different aspects, and I really enjoyed it. So hopefully you did too. But make sure to check out the link in the description. I will make sure to add her stuff in there. And also, my name's at the end of the book. Just saying. But check out the links in the description, like my Twitter, Instagram, everything like that is in there, including my Gmail if you would like to submit a story. I would love to tell some subscriber stories. Trust me, I'm waiting for the day that I get a whole bunch. Haven't really gotten many, but I'm still working through all of the stories I've been sent. And also, if you would like to become a channel member, make sure to check that out as well. It just went live just 2 days ago, so make sure to check that out if you want to see more bonus or exclusive content. And I'm probably going to end up uploading a bloopers content as well, if you guys would like to hear that. But other than that, stay safe, stay scary, and I'll see you in the next one. And hopefully my schedule will stay